Welcome back. We are in Basi Legani Tashin Chavav, learning this year's parak of the Friedrich Rebbe's Hemshech Parak Tes Zayin. We are on page Yud Zayin of these booklets, of these Basi Legani booklets, and the paragraph that starts Amnam L'chayra Ine Muvan. We started that paragraph last week. We read the first few lines, which was a question, the Rebbe's question to start off this discussion. And that's where we finished. We ended off with the question. So we will reread inside, page Zayin. We'll reread inside the question. But before the question, let's obviously quick recap what's going on over here. Very simply, the Rebbe, first in the long Ois Aleph, the Rebbe caught us up in the Hemshech up until Parak Zayin, which is this year. So the Rebbe gives us the broad overview of the Hemshech, that we want to make a Dir B'Tachtoinim, we want to do the Avodah like the Mishkan, bring the Shekhinah into this world, and for that we are called Tzivus Hashem. For that there is the Bizbuz Ha'itris, the king gives out in a reckless way all the treasures. And what is the treasure? So the Friedrich Rebbe starts explaining this line from Zayar, Oirin Seif L'mayla Adin Keitz L'mata Adin Tachlis. And that is the theme of a big part of Basi Legani, definitely the last half of Basi Legani, explaining this line, Oirin Seif L'mayla Adin Keitz L'mata Adin Tachlis. And as the Rebbe explained at the beginning of Siv Beis, that in Prakim Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, and Tesvav, the Friedrich Rebbe explained the, so to speak, Pashat Pshat of Aryan Seif L'mayla the Keitz L'mata Adin Tachlis, which is that Aryan Seif extends everywhere, extends to L'mayla Adin Keitz and to prefix Lamed, L'mayla Adin Keitz L'mata Adin Tachlis. And as the Friedrich Rebbe described at length in the previous Prakim, what is Mayla Adin Keitz and what is Mata Adin Tachlis. The Chiddush of Parak Zayin, this year's Parak, as the Rebbe started off last week in Siv Beis, is that now the Friedrich Rebbe is going to show us a whole new appreciation that we're not just describing the place where Oyer and Seif goes, we're not just describing the infinite light of Hashem where it extends to, we're actually describing the infinite light of Hashem itself. In other words, the greatness of Hashem itself, Himself. Now, in that line, the greatness of Hashem Himself, the Rebbe did show us last week that the Friedrich Rebbe is not talking about Hashem Himself literally. In the words of Chassidus, the yecholes of Atzmos, the ability of Hashem Himself to do anything. That's actually not what we're describing. We're describing in the first level, the very first level, and we're going to describe this more today, Be'ez Hashem, the very first level of Hashem's oyer, of Hashem's light, which means of Hashem's expression. In that very most sublime, highest, whatever fancy word you want to use, but in that first expression of Hashem's oyer, of Hashem's light, that's where the Chiddush is, that the definition of that light itself is that it's Mayla Adin Keitz and it's Mata Adin Tachlis. It's the highest and the lowest. What does that mean, the highest and the lowest? We're going to describe here. But before that, that's where the Rebbe starts off this discussion. How can we talk about the light of Hashem that's Ein Sof? That means that it's unlimited. And this is the question in the beginning of Yud Zayin, so we'll read it again and we'll reread it again now. How can we describe the unlimited light of Hashem as that it's the highest and the lowest? Highest and lowest are limitations. So no problem, you're saying that it's the highest and it's the lowest, but automatically that's already a definition, which therefore means a limitation, a context. So let's quickly reread the question inside. It's the first 4 lines of the new paragraph on page Zayin. But seemingly it's not understood. How can he use the words highest and lowest about Oyer Seif, about the unlimited light of Hashem? Dihine, meaning to say, to develop this question, Befeirush Oyer Seif, Mevar Rabbeinu Azakim B'chama Mekoymos, She'ein Ze Oyer She'nimshach Me Ein Seif. The Alter explains in many places that the taich of Oyer Seif is not the Oyer of Ein Sof, the light of the unlimited. So the unlimited is talking about Hashem, and the light is not necessarily as unlimited. Zakt al that's not how to read those words. Ki'im, rather, or shehu atzmai Ein Sof, an or that is Ein Sof. Hainu Ein Sof amiti. That means that the light itself is the ultimate, limitless. She'ein lo tchila ve'ein lo sof v'chulu, has no beginning, has no end. V'im kein, if so, leishayich by chiluki dargis d'mayla mata. You can't define it by saying it's highest and it's lowest. It's not highest, it's not lowest. There's no such thing as high and low if you're talking about unlimited. Unlimited is infinite. It's everywhere the same. There's no higher and lower to therefore to use as barometers, as levels to describe the greatness of this art. So that was the question that we ended off last week. Let's go right into the answer that the Rebbe is going to say. And with this, the Rebbe begins his journey, as the Rebbe does in every single Basi Legani Maimer, goes through a piece from each one of the Rebbeim. Some years in order, some years not in order. Here we are going to start Taka with the Alter Rebbe. We'll get back to the Baal Shem Tov and the Mr. Magid at the end of the Maimer, but we're going to start with the Alter Rebbe, and we're going to see we're going to start the discussion of Oyer Ein Sof, starting with the Alter Rebbe. So we're like 6 lines into a new paragraph on page Yud Zayin. We'll understand this based on the explanation that the Alter Rebbe gives in the Maimer that begins with the words, not a pasuk, but a Maimer that begins with the words. We want to understand this concept of Oyer Ein Sof, of the light, of the unlimited light of Hashem. Vishal Achrav and the following Maimer. Now, it happens to be that there's many fundamental Mamarim of the Alter Rebbe and then of later Rebbeim, based on this Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, that begin with those words. And like we mentioned last week, this concept of understanding Oyer Ein Sof, and especially the line from Zohar, Oyer Ein Sof l'mayla d'keitz l'mata d'in tachlis, this is a massive topic within Chassidus, a massive fundamental topic in Chassidus. It takes up prime real estate in Basi Legani, and that's where it's, I guess in a certain way most famously chewed over. But it will come up in so many different Mamarim. There's so many parts of this discussion. And one part of this discussion, the Alter Rebbe zooms in, which then becomes its own massive topic in Chassidus, the difference of Oyer and Shefa. Why do we call the energy of Hashem as Oyer, light? Light is a very specific term. Light is a very specific concept. Light, yeah? If we're trying to describe the energy of Hashem, clearly we're not talking about like the light like in the first day of creation, or the light from the sun from the fourth day of creation. That's not what we mean when we talk about the Oyer of Hashem, especially when we're talking about Oyer Ein Sof, the very unlimited light of Hashem. We're talking about, obviously, you brought in the idea that we're talking about all existence, everything. Everything comes from Hashem, and we're describing the everythingness that comes from Hashem. And yes, even not just in this physical world, but all the way up and all the way spiritual and all the way beyond what we could even tangibly discuss. But we're discussing all of that, so why Oyer? To strengthen the question, the Rebbe Shah points out in Samach Vav that Taka, and the earlier the Tzemach Tzedek points us out, that Taka, the earlier Choikrim, the earlier Jewish philosophers, and one reference is the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, and the Rambam actually discusses this at length. They use a different word to describe all the isness that comes from Hashem. They use the word Shefa. Shefa means flow. The flow from Hashem. And the Rambam actually goes on a whole explanation in Moreh Nevuchim, giving a mashal from a spring of water that flows, and says that, yeah, that's a good idea of understanding what it means that all the energy that flows from Hashem. He goes on to explain that just like the spring of water, it doesn't start from it's just going, and you could come in at any point of that flow. You could end at any point of that flow, and it's the same flow. The flow is not limited to a specific function, to a specific purpose. You could channel the water off to any different use. So the Rambam spells out at length how, yeah, that's the idea of the flow of energy that comes from Hashem, that there's so many different functions that it has. Beautiful. So, and the Rebbe actually has a Maimer, V'nocha Tavshinidal, where the Rebbe explains that that's actually why the Choikrim like the term Shefa, beyond just the exact words that the Rambam uses. The Rebbe expands the idea that because Shefa doesn't limit it to any one idea, like what the Rambam says about the water. So the water is a mashal, but Shefa means a flow. Flow of what? Anything, exactly. It's just a flow. It's Hashem's flow. It's Hashem exists, and therefore other things exist. I guess the best word in English would be energy, right? So the flow of energy, and taka koyach, which means power. Energy is another word that's used in this broader topic, which we're not delving into over here, of the different terms that could be used. So that brings up the question: why does why do the Mikubalim already, and based on that Chassidus, why do we use the word Ur? And as the Tzemach Tzedek asks in the question, he says it very nice. He says like everything is Ur in Soif, Ur Pnimi, Ur Makif, Ur Yasher, Ur Chayzer. Everything is Ur. Why Ur? Why light? It's not light. Definitely not the way light we understand it. And the answer is one very fundamental piece that Alter Rebbe says in this mimer that we're quoting here. Let's see. Indeed, when we say Or Ein Sof, the unlimited light of Hashem, we're not limited to light. We're talking about notice the words the Rebbe uses there. Hashpoas HaKoyach v'Achayis, like we're literally throwing everything together. The flow of light, of energy and life from Hashem. So exactly, Or Ein Sof means everything. And if you want to understand what that means, it's everything. So the Alter Rebbe's description is that this energy from Hashem could bring to life unlimited amount of worlds. Forget about physical worlds. Anything, spiritual worlds. Now, as if we have such a massive grasp over the different types of spiritual worlds to be able to appreciate, wow, unlimited amount of worlds. But yeah, if we had any appreciation of what the different types of spiritual worlds are, then Or Ein Sof could be an unlimited amount of spiritual worlds. And soon we're going to see another Chiddush of Alter Rebbe that not just worlds, but spheres. We'll see that soon. V'alkein nikra Ein Sof. Therefore, as Alter Rebbe, that's why it's called Ein Sof. V'nikra or v'loy shefa. But we use the term oir and not shefa, light, lefi she'in b'mhusay v'atzmusi sparch shum shinui v'spailos. The key factor that needs to be emphasized, that's so important for Chassidus, and that's why we use Or, is to appreciate that all the massive accomplishments that Or Ein Sof does, nothing that doesn't change Hashem Himself. Hashem is not changed, Hashem is not affected by all the massive accomplishments that happen from Him. That's what we need to understand from the word Or and not Shefa. What does that mean? So first of all, K'mashal or Hashemesh, two mishal. Number one, the light of the sun. Here it's not spelled out very briefly, but let's spell it out from other places in Chassidus. Yeah, the light of the sun, the light, as Chassidus famously says, the light of the sun will shine equally on the palace of the king and on the garbage dump. It's the same light, the same sun. Why? How could the sun shine on the palace of the king the same way as the garbage dump? It's not bakavitik. It should be more light onto the palace. The answer is because the sun, the ball of the sun, the actual star, it doesn't care about what's coming out from it. It doesn't care about what's happening, the effect that it's happening. It's a massive effect that's happening. The sun is providing light, and therefore we could see, and therefore the palace is illuminated. But the sun doesn't care about it, and that's why it's not different to the palace as it is to the garbage. V'chein, the second mashal, to understand the concept of Or. Kishaneshama mislabeshes ba'aguf. The energy that the neshama provides to the body, mimela haguf nasachai. The body is automatically alive. Now, this is itself a massive topic in Chassidus, the exact correlation between the neshama, the soul, and the body. In exactly what way does the soul give energy to the body? And there's many different layers to that, and this is a topic for itself. But here, very briefly, in one element of it, in the most basic element of it, the neshama is not actively giving life to the body. It's not like sitting there with the machine pumping energy into the body. The person is alive, and that life exists in any situation. So similar to like we said about the sun shining on the palace and the garbage dump, the person is the same alive when he's awake, when he's sleeping. Yeah, of course, we know, especially in this, we talk about, when a person's sleeping, it's not as strong of a koyach, he's not as alive, right? Even in halacha, that's why we wash negelvasser, we say Meida'ani when we wake up, because it's the 60th of death. Of course, but again, on the most basic level, the person is the same alive when he's awake, when he's sleeping, when he's in a good mood, when he's in a bad mood, right? I guess like exactly. Right. I guess good mood and bad mood would be like the muscle of the sun and the palace and the garbage dump, right? We are the same alive when we're like a palace of the king and when we're like a garbage dump. So in that level, the neshama's life for the body, again, is that idea of light. It doesn't need to actively go and each second bring a new energy to the body, al derech shefa, like it would be when we would call shefa. Zok Chassidus, that's why Kabbalah and Chassidus uses the term Or. Because let's go back to Shefa. Indeed, Shefa has the quality that it's all-inclusive. But Shefa, when you talk about Shefa, you're connoting that there's an active involvement of what we use, mashpia, right? That's the term, mashpia, the one who's giving the energy, the flow, to the mushpa, to the one who's receiving that flow. There needs to be an active involvement. I mean, let's start like really basic. When we talk about that concept of a mashpia, all right, we use that word mashpia. Yeah, of course, the mashpia needs to get actively involved with the person that he's helping, the mentor. That we use the word mashpia. He needs to actually care and think about the details of the situation of the person. It's not going to be like, yeah, one answer fits all. It needs to be catered. It needs to be tailor-made. So shefa, Zach says shefa by definition, a flow of energy. The flow of energy needs to be catered and tailor-made, which means it's not about the difference. It's about that the mashpia, the source, needs to get involved. He needs to lower himself down and limit himself in whatever way, either actually or just psychologically, in order to be mashpia. And we don't want to use that word for a Hashem. Because that's a massive fundamental point about when Hashem gives energy to the world, it doesn't do anything to him. It doesn't affect him. It doesn't change him in his essence. And that's why it's a mashal. That's why both the guf and the sun are a mashal for the or and the ha'ara that Hashem uses to give off to the world. And here we just read the word ha'ara, and that becomes a key word for the understanding. Ha'ara literally means something that shines off, something that comes out of, a trace, a lowered down expression. That's the key word. Or and ha'ara obviously share the same shayresh. That's the key expression to understand how Hashem relates to the world. It's not Hashem himself. It's not Hashem changing. Ani Hashem leishanisi. Hashem doesn't get affected in his essence by everything that he does, and therefore by everything that his light does. And that's why we use the term Or. Two more lines from the Alter Rebbe, and then the Rebbe will pick up and explain and tie back what that means to our topic of Basi Legani. The Alter Rebbe continues in his mimer. Like we said before, that Or Ein Sof, because it's unlimited, it could have created unlimited amount of worlds. V'gam, another point the Alter Rebbe says is it could have created a unlimited amount of spheroids, of different expressions. We're used to the concept of 10 expressions. And as we're going to quote soon, it's a very specific number. 10 not 9, 10 not 11 is expression Sefer Yetzirah. There's 10 spheres that are the makeup of Seder Shtalshos. Well, why? Who said 10? Why 10? The answer is you're right. It doesn't have to be 10. That's the power of Ein Sof. Ein Sof means unlimited. It could have been an unlimited amount of spheroids. Again, just to like kind of blow our minds. Again, not that we have such a deep and intimate relationship with the spheres that we're like, no, can't be more than 10, right? So it's like, okay, fine, yeah, it could have been 11. It wouldn't have changed our lives. But if we had a deep appreciation of the 10 spheres and realize how that is the makeup of not just our own life, but the entire Seder Shtalshlos, the entire world and all the worlds, then you know what? Or Ein Sof could have done 11. Or Ein Sof could have done 100. Or Ein Sof could have done unlimited amount. This is the point of the Alter Rebbe. And now the Rebbe spells out that what the Alter Rebbe is really doing here, if we focus on these 2 points of the Alter Rebbe is drawing a paradox. And that's exactly the paradox of Or Ein Sof l'mayla l'keitz matan tachlis. Here we go. The idea is this that we call it Or Ein Sof. Number one, it's number one is to tell us that we're not talking about the Ma'or. We're not talking about the source of the light, Hashem himself. Ki'im Or, we're only talking about Hashem's light, which means, like the word Or connotes, ha'ara. Like we said before, ha'ara and ara the same word, but ha'ara same shayresh, but ha'ara brings out a new appreciation. Oh yeah, or could sound massive, or could sound grand. When you say ha'ara, it's already it's only a second hand. It's only a trace. It's only an extension of. So why that's important over here to emphasize that we're talking about Or, not Ma'or, is because that's the massive important difference between Or and Ma'or. Mitzadin ha-Ma'or, from the perspective of Hashem himself, drawing back from last week's discussion, the beginning of this paragraph, that Yechoiles, Hashem's ultimate ability to do anything. Yeah, from Hashem's ultimate essential ability. Yeah, that's where the question from the beginning of this year is relevant. When you're talking about Hashem himself, you cannot define Ma'or l'mayla l'keitz mata mata d'tachlis, because Ma'or, Hashem himself, is ultimate, is the essence of everything. You can't use terms and definitions to bring out his greatness. Those terms and definitions don't exist in Hashem's greatness. Right? It's in a very watered down mashal. It's the mashal saying that person is so rich that to him $100,000 and $1,000 are the same. Right. There's so much to saying that person doesn't talk in words of $100 and $1,000. Hundreds and thousands are not numbers by this rich person. Right. So by Hashem saying that Hashem himself is so great that what? That Maila and Mata, the highest and lowest, are the same to him? No kidding. Highest and lowest aren't things. Right. Nothing is things in Hashem himself. So in the essence of Hashem, that's where the question has a right to, like, that's where the question is not answerable. That's where we would have a valid question. How could you define Hashem himself, the Maor, as Maila Mata? V'hainu, because when it comes to Hashem himself, Shurak noisein yonim elu. Of course he includes those topics, because he's kol yachol, he could do anything. But you can't identify Hashem himself by those two levels. And certainly you cannot say that there's a difference, and even a great difference between those two levels, because those two levels don't exist as levels. They're not things by which to use a framework. But that's what we appreciate from this discussion. That here we're not talking about Ma'or, we're talking about Or. We're talking about Hashem's light, we're talking about Hashem's extension. Rabbi Yossi Patil says Hashem's last name. That's a few ways to say it. Hashem's last name. Not God, godliness. Elikus, not Elika. So but from the perspective of Or, if we're talking about Or, Harima Yosei Or in Soif, that's the Chiddush what Alter Rebbe is showing us to appreciate. Yes, we're talking about Or in Soif. And in the words of Alter Rebbe, that from the perspective of this unlimited light, there could have been an unlimited amount of worlds. And not just an unlimited amount of worlds, which is already some form of creation, but Spherois advocates. There could have been an unlimited amount of recipes, of formulas with which to create these unlimited amount of worlds. But that's the paradox, that even though this Or is Ein Soif, nevertheless, it's already an extension, it's already a trace, it's already an expression. And this is like in parentheses a reference to like the deep or chassidus that will go and break it down and rip apart Seder Shtalshos layer after layer to show that no, nothing exists there. So you can't say that's a revelation. Okay, fine, but it's a source to what later becomes a revelation. Fine, so it's not the topic here, the Rebbe puts in parentheses. But the point is that we're already talking about Or, we're already talking about an expression, bilvad, only, in other words, not Hashem himself, and therefore, therefore you could already define it by actual definitions, that there's a Maila and there's a Mata. There's an above, there's a below. That these are two distinct levels, to the point that between these two distinct levels exists, not only a difference, but a big difference. By the way, very interesting. We know that the Rebbe, I don't know if every mimer, I don't know the details, but the Rebbe would prepare notes before saying a mimer for himself. No, the Rebbe wouldn't read from the notes. Definitely not. I don't even think the Rebbe necessarily brought the notes to the Farbrengen. But the Rebbe would make notes for himself, and later we found they found these notes. Many times the Rebbe himself published these notes with the mimer that would later be published. So for specifically Basi Legani, because the Rebbe is going through the Torah of all the Rebbeim, the Rebbe would, again, I can't say every year, I don't know exactly the history, but very often the Rebbe would write down the notes of like which mimer of which Rebbe he's saying and what point he wants to bring out, like in the flow of the Rebbe's new mimer, what point from each Rebbe wants to bring out. So in this book that they printed the Rebbe's notes on this mimer, and if you look back, it's on page Yud Beis. On page Yud Beis is where you see the notes. Is where you see the notes, and so let's just briefly read the Rebbe's notes, because again, it was like the Rebbe's own summary of what he's talking about. We're not going to do obviously the whole mimer now, just the beginning, what we already saw. Which page? Page Yud Beis. Mechadesh. The Rebbe points out that the Friedrich, it's very cryptic obviously because it's shorthand notes. Mechadesh, the Friedrich Rebbe is being Mechadesh, he's bringing out a new point in Parak Tes Zayin, Loi Lemata and Lemaila as Beis Mekomis Nefradim, that when we say Orin Seif Lemaila, Lemaila the case Lemata Mata Den Tachlis, we're not referring to two separate destinations where Orin Seif extends. Ki'im B'Makim Echad, we're talking about that they exist in one place, Ve'efoi, and where? De Be'oyer Ein Soif, that in Oyer Soif itself, and in parentheses, V'Loi In Tchila, notice that we're not defining Hashem as Hashem's light as Or in Tchila, the light with no beginning. We're defining as the light with no end. Now, in our mimer, that wasn't discussed, that wasn't explained. You see here it's in parentheses. In other places, it's discussed at length, Samach Vav at length, but also in the follow-up mimer, As we also mentioned last week, that the following Shabbos, Yud Shvat that year was Monday. So the following Shabbos, the Rebbe said a mimer called Vayoylech, which is later in this booklet. And over there, that mimer, the follow-up, the Rebbe did talk more about this point, the light difference of Aron Seif and Aron Tchila. But again, for here, it's not a discussion. Beis Madregos of Lemaila Ulamata. In other words, that the Chiddush, and it's not just, let's also use this as a point of summarizing what we just learned. That yes, what was the chiddush of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Perek Zayin? Before we even get to the details, and we still have there's a lot of details to get to, a lot of explanation of what we just said. But the point of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Perek Zayin is that the chiddush of Or Ein Sof, the chiddush of Hashem's unlimited light, is that the definition of this light is that it is above and below at the same time. Okay, I mean, obviously that sounds paradoxical and obviously it sounds confusing. We'll develop the power of what that means. But before that, continuing in the Rebbe's notes, seemingly, and this is what we just learned, the question, how could you call over there in Or Ein Sof, Maila and Mata? Ella could appear Shadamar Azlakin, rather like the Alter Rebbe explained, the appears Or Shu Atzmoi Ein Sof Amiti, that Or, it's called Or because it itself is the unlimited light, Aval B'chol Ze Nikra Or, but yet the point is that it's only Or, it's only light, not Ma'or, it's not Hashem himself. And then the source, the Rebbe is writing for himself, the source, Soif Sefer Tafresh Chav Zayin, page Tav Chaf Aleph, the end of the Sefer Mamarim Tafresh Chav Zayin. Now, just if you're paying attention to numbers, Tafresh Chav Zayin is the Rebbe Marash. We were just talking about a member of the Alter Rebbe. The answer is very simply in Tavshin Chavav in 1966, the Mamarim of the Alter Rebbe. We're not talking about Torah Or. This is a mimer that Alter Rebbe that's not in Torah Or. That mimer was not published yet. The Mamarim of the Alter Rebbe that we have, the set, were only printed in the early mems, in the early 80s. So this mimer of the Alter Rebbe was only known from a mimer of the Rebbe Marash, that the Rebbe Marash said over a mimer of the Alter Rebbe. So that's just a technical thing. That's why the Rebbe is referencing the Alter Rebbe's mimer in a mimer of the Rebbe Marash. But we now have, you can look in our booklets on the bottom, footnote 34 and 35, that will give you where in the Alter Rebbe set of Mamar, and you can find this mimer. Okay, but here's the next line. And the chiddush over here is that even though it's in one place, we're talking about Or Ein Sof itself, number one, Hefresh, number two, Gadol B'neihem. There's a difference, and there's a massive difference between them. As opposed to the way it exists in Hashem's ultimate ability to do anything, which is part of Hashem's essence himself, that you can't say that it's different, you can't say that it's two levels, you can't say there's a difference, you definitely can't say there's a big difference, because in the level of Hashem's ultimate essence, everything is one, there's only Hashem. And anything Hashem could do, which he could do, everything doesn't exist as separate entities to define Hashem by. So the fact that it's defined as a difference, and as a very big difference, in the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Hefresh Gadol, that shows that we're not talking about Hashem himself, we're talking about Or. That's the chiddush, that it's Or, but it's Ein Sof. It's Maila, Mata, Mata. Okay, so that's a beautiful summary for the opening part of the Rebbe's, of the Maimer Basi Legani for this year. Now starts the meat. Okay, so explain that now. So what does it mean that in Or Ein Sof itself, you have Maila and Mata, Hashem's ultimate light, Hashem's unlimited light is the highest and is the lowest. Gimel. Let's continue. Page Yud Ches, Sif Gimel. Varba Maimer. So now, as the Rebbe does, quoting piece by piece, a few lines at a time from the Frierdiker Rebbe's parak, and then explaining it. So continuing in the Frierdiker Rebbe's words, Demash Or Ein Sof L'Maila Maila Den Kates. This page Yud Ches. Demash Or Ein Sof L'Maila Maila Den Kates. This that Or Ein Sof is. First of all, L'Maila Maila Den Kates, the highest to no end. This is the secret and hidden light of Hashem that is not even categorically revealed. And it's not even categorically drawn down, expressed. It will never come, not only actually revealed, it will never even come into the category of revelation. So it's light, but it's not revealed. So what does that mean? As we say in Zoyar, famously in Pasach Elio, Antu ilo'o al kol ilo'in, sesima al kol sesimin. You, Hashem, are higher than anything that's high. You are hidden from anything that's hidden. Shehu sosum be'etzem. So the Frierdiker Rebbe's diok is, you are hidden from anything that's hidden, means that there's one level of hiddenness. And the Rebbe will spell it out. That one level of hiddenness means something that's hidden, meaning that you don't know it, you don't have it. But It's something that exists and exists very much, just hidden from you. Hashem is sesima al kol sesimin. He's hidden from everything that's hidden, which means that the ultimate hiddenness of Hashem, the secrecy of Hashem, the etherealness of Hashem is that it's not just that you can't get it, you can't understand it. It is not gettable. It's not describable. It's not revelationable. So that's the Lamai din Kates, and we're gonna yet develop this. And at the same time, this that Iron Seif is low down all the way to no end. That means that Hashem is describable. It is revelationable. It is relatable to the worlds. Generally speaking, this is how Hashem already starts revealing himself to himself. Pirish, de be'atzmusay gufa, meaning that within Hashem himself, it's as if to say that Hashem is revealed to himself. These are just word for word from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now, already in brackets, let's put in, the Rebbe is explaining, again, if you were just reading the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer and didn't realize the Chiddush of Perek Zayin, so what I mean, again, this is like, we already said this like for 4 prakim, in the case of Matan and Tachlis, it's revealed, it's hidden. No, Dr. Rebbe, remember, the Chiddush of Perek Zayin is that we're not talking about the way that Iron Seif actually extends itself down into the worlds. Shaharei, in the brackets, Shaharei, we're not talking about the way that Hashem reveals himself and Hashem does extend himself all the way down throughout all the worlds, including to this lowest world where there's nothing lower than it. And within this world itself, the way that Hashem even allows himself to give over, to be available for Rishayim, for Klippa, because anything that exists needs to receive its energy from Hashem. So if anything exists, even the most evil thing, it means that it has a connection to Hashem. So that's true. But that's not what we're talking about here. As the Rebbe developed at the Chiddush of Perek Zayin, that's the discussion in the previous prakim. The previous prakim is the way Hashem is lemata ad ein tachlis, literally to ein tachlis. That the way we see here in this physical world, this table, this cup, and lahavdil, a negative thing, a bad thing, that is an extension of Hashem's energy. But that's not the discussion in Perek Zayin. Ki'im, rather, let's not lose track of the fundamental point of Perek Zayin. We're talking about a description of Iron Seif itself. So now you can't say that Lamata din Tachlis, it's the same formula, that Lamata din Tachlis means the ultimate Gilui. But now the Gilui cannot be in physical world. Lamata din Tachlis means a Gilui, a revelation for Hashem within Hashem himself. That's going back, that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe means, that within Hashem himself, Hashem is revealed to himself, so to speak. That's the Lamata din Tachlis, which as much as we don't know what that means at all, now we're saying that even deeper than that is the Lamaila din Kates. So according to that, spell out what the end of that sentence would be, that Lamaila din Kates means that even within Hashem himself, there's an element of Hashem that he's not revealed even to himself. What in the world does that mean? Okay, so number one, what in the world does that mean? But number two, again, let's appreciate the flow. Let's never lose track of the flow of the Maimer, that we're trying to bring out the Oitzar, the most hidden treasure of Hashem. That's a treasure. That's a hidden treasure. So in the line of Zoyar, L'mayla den Kates L'mata Badin Tachlis, of course, the hidden treasure is going to be the L'mayla den Kates part. The Chiddush of Perek Zayin is that L'mayla den Kates doesn't just mean the hidden part of Hashem relative to the revealed part of Hashem to us. Now we appreciate the Chiddush that the hidden part of Hashem means the hidden part of Hashem relative to the revealed part of Hashem to Hashem. Lemata adin tachlis, meaning the part that Hashem gets about himself, so to speak, the part that Hashem reveals for himself. So there's a part of Hashem that's almost like you're almost touching Hashem's essence. And that part of Hashem is hidden even to Hashem himself, whatever that even means. And by the way, if you don't understand what I'm saying, first of all, of course I don't either, but no one understands it. That's the whole point of those words. L'mayla adin kates. It's hidden from definition of being revealed from. It's not hidden because you and I aren't smart enough to understand it. It's hidden by definition. There is no definition to it.
What's the point of learning it?
What's the point of learning it? Or what's the point of it at all? Right? So I don't want to give away.
I can't understand it. I can't understand the point of it.
So even if you can't connect to it on the level of understanding, there could still be a point where it exists, even not on a level of understanding, right? We don't understand smell either, but smell is still something that we want to have, right? So I don't think it's fair to say like, oh, if you can't understand it, then why does it exist? But if not only we can understand it, but like, what is the point of it at all? Well, I don't want to give away the answer, but let's remember the track of the whole Basi Legani. That is the answer. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I mean, it can't be a point.
We're going to see it. We're going to get there. Yeah. Okay. Now, before we continue, the next paragraph, Veinin Bazah, is kind of a side point. In the bigger picture of what we're trying to describe, it's kind of a side point. The Rebbe is just making a tremendous diok. Remember, this is all the Rebbe learning Basi Legani, the Frierdiker Rebbe, chewing word after word. No one's a bigger chassid than the Rebbe in appreciating every word and every nuance of the Frierdiker Rebbe in general, and especially in Basi Legani, because it's the last mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe mentioned this idea of sesima al kol sesimin. So in the next paragraph, the Rebbe is just going to unpack that a little bit. So in the bigger picture of the mimer, maybe not as crucially important. A nice topic in Chassidus. Let's take a trip through Seder Shtalshalos now. So we're not going to delve into it in tremendous depth and we're not going to spend too much time on it. But for whatever we need to understand for this paragraph, we're going to take a trip through Seder Shtalshalos, and our tour guide will be none other than Eliyahu Hanavi. What's Eliyahu Hanavi doing here? So first of all, if you want to grab a siddur from the back, it might be helpful. This is we know from Pasach Eliyahu, we say it on every Friday Mincha before Shabbos, before Mincha and Erev Shabbos. Pasach Eliyahu, it's a long piece from Zoyar, from Tikkunei Zoyar, where Eliyahu Hanavi, Pasach Eliyahu Hanavi opens up. He starts off saying, V'amar, and he goes a long description about Hashem, and basically what he's doing in words of Zoyar, as elaborated at length in Chassidus, in many different places of Chassidus. So it's going through literally a tour of Seder Shtalshalos. So let's just read the line. Let's just read the line from the few lines from Pasach Eliyahu, so we have the words fresh. And then I would recommend maybe keeping the Sefer open in front of you, the Siddur open in front of you, and then page 125 in the Siddur, and then we'll see it in the Mimer. Pasach Eliyahu, we're not going to read the whole thing, just the first few lines. Pasach Eliyahu, the Omar Eliyahu starts off and he says, Rebbein Olman, Master of the world, you are one, but not part of a calculation, right? Like the number one is a number. So he says, no, one, but not one as a series of numbers. You are supreme, you are higher than everything that's high. Sesima al kol sesimin, you are hidden from everything that's hidden. Those were the exact words that we just quoted in the Mimer. Leis machshava tfisa v'chlal, no mind, no understanding could grasp you at all. And then, antu da pikas asher tikunin, you are the one who brought forth 10 tikunin, which is another word for the 10 spheres. And then the rest of Pasach Eliyahu is elaborating on the 10 spheres. So, we don't need to continue, just those first few lines, but what Chassidus picks up on is that in this opening, dear God, in this opening, in these opening titles of Hashem, there were a lot of titles. So what's going on? What does it mean that Hashem is one without count? He's higher on the highest, he's secret from the secrets, no mind could grasp him at all. Really what the question of Chassidus is this all one thing? And if yeah, then why do we need so many words for one thing? So the premise is that this is not one thing. Already in those cryptic lines, we already just defined a lot about Seder Shtalshalos. Before we even got to the spheres. The spheres come next. The spheres, which is like pretty much, the highest levels of definitions that we could grasp at all. Chesed, Gvura. We know that we don't know what Hashem's Chesed is, but we know that we use Chesed as a mashal because we can understand what the concept of kindness is. Well, guess what? Yeah, that's the ceiling of our understanding. And what we're saying is that way beyond that, there's so much more going on, but not just as one hodgepodge. Maybe for us it's a hodgepodge, but it's very definitive. There's different levels. And that's what Chassidus spends a lot of time, starting most famously from the Altar's Mimer in Tera'ar, Parshas Vayera, Pasach Eliyahu, and from there, so many memorim elaborating on Seder Shtalshalos using these words as our guide. And here we enter an interesting, and we know Bechal the Mittler Rebbe, we're moving on in the Rabbeim, in Basi Legani, we're up to the Mittler Rebbe. And we know Bechal the Mittler Rebbe, his Chassidus is unique You have it a little bit, I think, in Tzemach Tzedek as well, but the Mittler Rebbe a lot, where the Mittler Rebbe will write Chassidus almost like as giving you multiple different options. He'll write a whole piece of Chassidus and then he'll say, but there's another way of looking at this whole thing, exactly the opposite of what we just said. In fact, there's many times that the Mittler Rebbe writes, Deloy Canal, not like what we just said before, like almost like taking away the premise, which is very unique for Chassidus. Usually Chassidus, everything is straightforward. It's not like kind of machloikes. I mean, there are machlekes in Kabbalah, but not as much as in Gemara, as in Halacha. Of course not, because we're talking about the oneness of Hashem. How could there be arguments? But the Mittler Rebbe just writes like that. In fact, on a tangent, last week's Likutei Sichos Chelek Aleph from Parshas Shmois, the Rebbe spoke about it actually. The Rebbe explained because the Mittler Rebbe writes as literally as a stream of consciousness, literally just expressing his thoughts, with like a bare ability to limit those thoughts, and that's why the Mittler Rebbe will just like write down the thought and then later realize that no, actually there's another way of looking at it. So while maybe other Rabbeim won't write down that whole process, the Mittler Rebbe will write down that whole process because he's writing as he's thinking. On another note, there's a description how sometimes you read the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidus and you realize there's words missing. And the answer was the Mittler Rebbe Pasha kept on writing. Sometimes he wrote off the paper onto the table because he was just like literally just writing and he couldn't contain his stream of consciousness. This was something specifically about the Mittler Rebbe. Anyways, so we're going to quote here in our mimer a mimer from the Mittler Rebbe where the Mittler Rebbe goes through this line, these two lines, and offers two interpretations of the difference between Antu Chadla v'Chushban and Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin. Why does that matter? Because we're trying to explain Sesima Kol Sesimin. Okay, so let's keep track of where we're heading into before we even start. We're trying to describe the Sima Simin. We're trying to describe Hashem's hiddenness of all hiddenness, because that's the words for Lemailad and Kates. To appreciate this, what is the definition of Hashem's secrets of all secrets? Let's back up and see that there's actually two ways of explaining Antu Chadla v'Chushban versus Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin. And again, it'll be recommended to keep the siddur open in front of you. And either way, however we're going to explain these two lines, the Mittler Rebbe will show us two options, but the Sesima Kol Simin is obviously even deeper and even more secretive than that. So here we go. The idea is the Mittler Rebbe explains in his Sefer in Teres Chaim befeirush hamaymer antu ilah kol ilah sesima kol sesimin sheyesh bazeh beis pirushim. So there's two explanations that the Rebbe offers for how to understand these lines. Pirush Aleph, number one, she'antu ilah chulu koi al oisa hadarga she'aleha nemar lifnei antu chadla v'chushban. Option one is that actually, even though generally we're breaking down the different levels, but this first one, Antu Chadla v'Chushban, is the same as the next one, Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin. Or going backwards, Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin it's not a new level, it's the explanation of Antu Chadla v'Chushban. You are one without a count means that you are higher over everything that's higher. Shadar Gazu, Yesh Ba'inin Noisov, Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin, Sesima Al Kol Sesimin. Move on. So what does that mean if you say so? That means so that means that Antu Ilah Kol Ilayin Sesima Kol Sesimin is a definition of Antu Chadla v'Chushban. You are one. Well, when we talk about Hashem, you are one. Number one. Well, first of all, we're not talking about the essence of Hashem. We're not talking about the essence of Hashem because remember, we can't talk about the essence of Hashem. So we're talking about already an expression of Hashem, right? Because that's the whole point of this paragraph. He's describing Hashem. But he's describing Hashem, the first description is Sesima Kol Sesimin. So for sure, according to this track, let's keep track. For sure, according to this option, Sesima Kol Sesimin is the highest level of Hashem's secrets, Hashem's secrecy, where it's not just that it's a secret from us, but it's a secret from anything. Because we're talking about the very first level of description. Fine. So for sure, according to this track, this option, we could appreciate how Sesima Kol Sesimin is the highest level of secrecy. It's a secret, the way we described the words before, which again, we still don't really know what that means, but it's hidden even from Hashem himself, so to speak. Okay? Let's read it inside. Again, move on. For sure, according to this track, Sesima Kol Sesimin means that Hashem is inherently secretive. Meaning that Kol Sesimin, all the hidden levels are the levels that are only hidden from us, but higher than us, they are revealed. Not that Sesima Kol Sesimin means that Hashem himself, it has a level of secrecy where it's a secrecy be'etzem, where it's not available for understanding at all. Sha'arei, it's like just as a simple mashal, like there's math, so there's some parts of math that maybe you and I don't understand. Definitely I don't understand, but maybe even you and I don't understand, and maybe even this professor doesn't understand, all the way up to Einstein and beyond, right? That they don't understand, right? It means that they don't understand it, but it's possible to understand. Then there's like these math riddles, right? Where it's like infinity, like it's a brain teaser, like one of these infinite loops, like one of the things that there's no way out, right? So that's something that's again relative to this discussion. Right. It's secret be'etzem. It's inherently a secret. Not a secret, because like I said, someone came up with it. So there's already an ownership of that concept. But within the realm of understanding, or as I should say, within the realm of an answer, here there is no answer. So using that as a mashal, there's levels of Hashem that are sittimin. That's a description of most of Seder Shtalshalos, definitely for us, and even within Seder Shtalshalos itself. But sittimin called sittimin is the level where Hashem, the highest level of secrecy, where it's not just a secret from us, which means that we don't get it, or a secret from Elam Matzilos because it's above Elam Matzilos. It's a secret be'etzem. There is no revelation available for that. Sha'arei, why are we talking here about something that's secretive be'etzem? She'al darga zu nemar antu chadva v'chushban. Because again, according to this first track of the Mittler Rebbe, Sesima Kol Simin is a description of Chadva v'Chushban, of the oneness of Hashem. She'ena yafilu, and what do you mean not part of the cheshbon? Which cheshbon? Which count? She'ena yafilu b'cheshbon eses frisa gnuzais. This is, as the Mittler Rebbe explains, when we talk about what does it mean that you are one but not part of the count? Which count? It means the count of the eser spheres hagnuzais, the hidden eser spheres. Hidden eser spheres is a big topic for itself. It's not to delve totally into it, but eser spheres hagnuzais means the way that spheres exist in the most raw way of potential, where there is no way to define them as spheres yet. It's only that later, when spheres evolve and do exist, we trace them back to this raw material, so to speak, of what we call eser spheres hagnuzais, the hidden eser spheres. Later on in the paragraph, we talk about that Hashem is Chakim, but not with known Chachma. Hashem is Maven, Bina, but not with known Bina. What does that mean? That's talking about the essence for Sagnuzais. That's talking about the, if you want to say primordial, if we're talking about the raw potential for spherais. And that's the cheshbon that we're saying here. Hashem is not part of that. The oneness of Hashem is not part of that cheshbon. Sheheim becheshbon shel eser davka eser v'leitesha eser v'leyachadasar. Like we mentioned before from Sefer Yetzirah, that's where cheshbon starts. That's where count starts, that it has to be specifically 10, 10 not 9, 10 not 11. And if we're saying Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban, Hashem is one, not part of that cheshbon, that's talking about the highest level of Ein Sof. So certainly in that highest level of Ein Sof, Sesima Kol Sesimin means that Hashem is secret within Him Himself. Well, Pirsha Beis, but then there's a second option in the Mittler Rebbe gives. Shala'achri Darga de Antu Chad V'Chushban, the Koyel Atzmos Ein Sof Mamish Bechinas Maor, Choshev Darga Nesefes Shel Mata Mizeh. A second option, what the Mittler Rebbe does, he raises the bar of Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban. The first track, Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban, was the first level of definition, and it continues with Antu Sesima Kol Ilah Kol Ilah and Sesima Kol Sesimin. He's high, he's secret. That's all part of the description. So that's if Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban, the opening line, was already a description. In the second option, Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban is not a description. Antu Chad is talking about the ant, the focus of ant, you. It's talking about the essence of Hashem, what we called the Ma'or, the source, Hashem as the source, not as not as any beginning of expression. So the second track, Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban, is Hashem, nothing else to talk about, period. Antu Chad V'Lav V'Chushban, period. Now let's start discussing. Now let's start terminizing. Now he starts with the first level of description. You are the highest of all highs and the secret of all secrets. V'gam l'pirish zeh, Dr. Rebbe tying us back to where we're holding, that even according to this second taich, hine mashakos of kol sesimin, when page yotes, that when he talks about the hidden levels, harizakelas kol in yonim shem b'chinas sesimin, that refers to all hidden levels. The hainu gam esres firsa gnuzais, like we mentioned before, just like I mentioned before, it's talking about even the hidden 10 spheres. Ule acher zeh oimer leis machshavat fisa v'chlal, in parentheses. It's not relevant for us, but just to show again the trip into Seder Shtalshalos, that only after that comes Leis Machshavat Tfisa V'Klal. That's only the next line. No mind could grasp you at all. Oh, you know what that's talking about? So if this term is familiar to you from Chassidus, the Koyal Machshava Kduma Da'ak. Machshava Ketuma Da'ak, literally translated as the pre-thought of Ak, which stands for Adam Kadmon, the primordial man, which is the highest level of description that we could give to anything, the primordial man, so to speak, the way that Hashem has any form of definition, any form of description. So the Machshava Haktuma, the preceding Machshava of that. Now, what in the world does that mean? I have no clue. These are things that we can't define. But what's interesting is that usually in Chassidus, if we were Machshava Ketuma Da'ak is one of those bumper stickers of Chassidus, meaning even not in Chassidus as a learning, but like in vernacular of Chassidus. Oh, it's Machshava Ketuma Da'ak. Like we're going all the way back to Machshava Ketuma Da'ak. That's usually the term we use for the beginning of all beginnings. Oh, yeah, and you know where that comes up in here later. Usually we use that as the address for the highest of the highs. But now we're seeing, no, that's in our context, that's the lowest. And let's appreciate why. Very simple why. Lowest of the highs, right. Why? Because Ak, it's Adam Kadmon. There's absolutely a description there. A description that we have no clue what's going on, sure, but a description. So in our context of Sithimin, of secrets, of course it has to be the lowest. We're talking about secrets. Secrets cannot be defined. Secrets cannot be made into some form of description.
So the Antu Chad is on Máor?
Yeah, according to the second Taich, right. V'im kain, third line on the page. V'im kain gam l'pir zehari antu sesima dechol sesimin hainu shu sasim be'etzem. The punchline is the same. The punchline is that sesima dechol sesimin. So if sesimin means the things that are hidden even from Machshava Ketuma Da'ak, but that means that they're hidden from Machshava Ketuma Da'ak, but they're begeder gilui. They're in the realm of revelation, just not for me and you, and not even for Ak. Sisim al kol sesimin means that it's essentially hidden. So this was a nice trip using the Mittler Rebbe, using Aliyah Novi as our guide through Seder Shtalshlos, just to throw around terms that are at the end of the day quite meaningless in a world of understanding. And what did we learn about today? Nothing. We didn't learn about anything today. But we learned that there exists a lot of nothing. We learned that there exists a lot of secrets, a lot of secrecy. Now let's go back to where we're holding in the flow of Basi Legani, fourth line of page of test. That's what the Friedrich Rebbe is referencing here. That this level of the highest of all highs, which is the concept of the highest of the highs and the secret of the secrets. Either way, going back through the Mittler Rebbe, either way, whichever track, because the difference was only in what the definition of Antu Chad v'Chushban was. But whatever level that is, Sisim Kol Simin is the highest level, but let's appreciate the paradox. Oyer, not Máor, Oyer Ein Sof. But the deepest level, the highest secret, whatever level of Ein Sof, that it's a Mála and Lamata. So the Mála part is who are Anelam Vasasum Sheina Begeder Gilui. Now we appreciate the diuk of the Friedrich Rebbe's words. He didn't say Sheina Begilui. That's not revealed. No kidding, it's not revealed. It's not Begeder Gilui. It's not just that you and I cannot have a shear about what that means. Hashem can't have it. Can't. But Hashem wouldn't have a shear about what that means. Hashem talking to himself wouldn't explain what Sesima Kol Sesimin is. Mála and Kates. The Mála and Kates is the part that even Hashem within himself is not. It's not Begilui. Certainly, it will never come. Again, not begilui, begeder gilui. Certainly, it will never come into the realm of revelation to the worlds. That's what it means, that it's not only secret and hidden from the recipient, it's secret essentially. Even within Hashem himself, it's hidden. Now, again, did we explain anything? Not much. We defined, we pinpointed how great and how secret and how sublime and lofty of a level we're talking about. Fascinatingly, yes, it's still a level. That's one important point that we have to keep on remembering, that the Rebbe made very clear over and over, that we're talking about Oyer, not Máor. So we're talking about a level. And that's the Chiddush, that there's this level that should be meaningful because it's a level. It's a Metzias for itself. What is the Metzias? So mysterious, so vague that not only we can't get it, it's not gettable at all. The Friedrich Rebbe, just a sneak peek where this is heading, the Friedrich Rebbe continues, and it catches our interest. He's going to say, I'll give you a mashal. Mashal, oh wow, also we're going to have some sort of form of understanding, and he's going to give a mashal of a Rav and a Talmud, a teacher who's teaching, And within the teaching, within the lesson, there's a part of the lesson that's not revealed. Not only that the teacher doesn't teach the student, that's one thing, but there's a part of the lesson that the teacher doesn't teach himself. Okay, so yeah, I was like, I thought you were going to give a mushal to actually understand it. No, we're just going to give you a mushal of more words that we can't understand, so to speak. What does that mean? That the teacher's not even teaching himself. Now, it's a mushal. So that means that we're going to start unpacking a little bit of what that means. And that's what the rabbi is going to spend a lot of time breaking down. Most of the Maimer is delving into this mushal. It takes up most of the space of Parak Design of the Friedrich Rebbe's Parak, the mushal of the Rav and the Talmud, the hidden seichel, not just that's hidden from the Talmud, but the hidden seichel, the part of the lesson that the teacher is not giving over even within himself. And that's this highest level that we're talking about. Now, to end off remembering, why do we care about this? Why is this relevant? Not the fact that we don't understand it, we got that we don't understand it. So why are we making such a big deal out of it? But in the bigger scheme of Basi Legani, that's the chiddush. That's the oitzer, that's the hidden treasure, the treasure, and the treasure that's given to every single yid to win the war. So we're not yet building this up, but we could already put in for the punchline that somehow this level that there's no shaykhs to, but not only there is a shaykhs to, this is available for every single yid to use to win the war against the Yetzer Hara, against the forces of negativity, to make this world a dir b'tachtenim and to bring Mashiach. Because this is what Hashem is recklessly distributing for the time of war. So now, not only do we have to kind of talk about it, we have to appreciate what's the availability of it if we can't even understand it. Right. So that's all how the Maimer is going to continue.